Be me, late 20s, working as an engineer. Life is pretty structured. Go to work, solve problems, come home. I like stability. I like when things make sense. A equals A, B equals B. For the last couple of years, my life has included Yvonne. We live together in the apartment I bought before I met her. It's a decent place, nothing fancy, but it's mine. She works in social media marketing, or something like that. It changes. Her job seems to consist of making posts about empowerment and synergy and then complaining about her clients. When we first met, she seemed bright, energetic, passionate. That passion slowly revealed itself to be a constant state of outrage about something or other. Our evenings have developed a certain pattern. I get home around 6. I'm usually the one who starts thinking about dinner. I'll find her on the couch, laptop open, scrolling intensely. She'll let out a loud sigh, the kind designed to be heard from another room. It's a summons. I walk into the living room. "Hey, how was your day?" That opens the floodgates. It was always a story of how she was undervalued. Her boss, a woman, was apparently an agent of the patriarchy. Her male colleagues were condescending, their very existence an act of microaggression. She'd talk about the immense emotional labor of just existing in her office space. I would listen, I'd nod, I'd say the things you're supposed to say. That sounds tough. You're right to be upset. It was like diffusing a bomb, except the bomb wanted you to agree that it had every right to explode. One evening, a few months back, I came home after a genuinely terrible day at work. A critical project component had failed, setting us back weeks. My boss was not happy. I was mentally fried. All I wanted was a quiet dinner, and maybe an hour of video games to decompress. I walked in, and she was already in the middle of a rant about a brand deal that fell through. I listened for a bit, then tried to gently change the subject. "My day was pretty rough too. Maybe we can just order a pizza and relax tonight?" Her face changed. The anger at her client was instantly redirected to me. My suggestion wasn't an offer of shared comfort. It was an attack. I was apparently trying to invalidate her feelings. I was being emotionally unavailable by not having the capacity to absorb her entire drama. My wanting a moment of peace was a clear sign of toxic stoicism. I ended up apologizing. We didn't order pizza. I cooked the dinner she wanted while she continued to explain how my inability to perform emotional support on demand was a problem. I just remember standing over the stove, stirring pasta sauce, feeling nothing but tired. It was like I was a battery, and my only purpose was to charge her. The double standards were everywhere, small things that built up over time. I had an old car, a project I'd been working on since college. It was my one real hobby. I'd finally saved up enough to buy a specific part I needed, a new manifold. It wasn't cheap, but I'd budgeted for it. When the box arrived, she looked at it with disdain. She started a conversation later that night about our financial goals. It was a lecture disguised as a dialogue. She was concerned about my frivolous spending. How could I waste money on a hunk of metal when we should be building a future together? This was the same week she had 3 packages delivered containing expensive skincare products she'd seen on a social media feed. When I pointed this out, as gently as I could, the logic was flawless in its absurdity. Her spending wasn't spending. It was an investment in her personal brand. My hobby was a childish waste of money. Her hobby, which was buying things, was a career move. There was no arguing with it. It was a different reality. We had a group of my old friends, guys I've known forever. We used to hang out regularly, poker nights, watch a game, just talk nonsense. After Yvonne moved in, that became difficult. If they came over, she would be politely cold. She'd sit in the same room, but build a wall around herself with her phone. She never joined the conversation, but she was always listening. Later, she would deconstruct everything they said. A joke one of my friends made was problematic. Their conversation about sports was an example of masculine tribalism. She wasn't telling me I couldn't see my friends. That would be too direct, too controlling. Instead, she'd just express her disappointment that I chose to spend my time with people who weren't aligned with my highest self. She was worried that their negative energy was holding me back. It was exhausting. It became easier to just see them less. I'd make excuses. Too busy with work, not feeling well. My friends knew. They never said anything directly, but I could see it in their eyes. They were waiting for me to wake up. Her friends, on the other hand, were a different story. They were a chorus of agreement, a flock of Yvonnes. They'd come over and talk for hours in a language I didn't understand. It was all buzzwords and pop psychology. They'd talk about holding space, manifesting abundance, and cutting out anyone with toxic energy. Toxic energy usually meant a boyfriend who asked where the money went, or a parent who suggested they get a real job. I was often the subject of their conversations, even when I was in the next room. I'd hear my name, followed by whispers. I learned that I was a project. She was working on me. She was trying to help me unpack my ingrained patriarchal conditioning. It felt less like a relationship and more like a re-education camp I was paying for. The idea of a shared future was always present, but it was a future of her design. My dream was simple: a small house with a yard, a garage for my car, and some peace and quiet. We had even opened a joint savings account for a down payment. I was putting in a significant amount from every paycheck. She was supposed to be contributing too. She loved the idea of the house, but only in the abstract. She'd spend hours on websites, looking at expensive furniture and talking about the vibe she wanted for the interior. She never talked about the mortgage, the property taxes, the maintenance. Those were boring logistical details, man details. Her contribution was the vision. My contribution was the money. Then came the retreats. Her need for self-discovery couldn't be satisfied at home, apparently. A weekend trip I suggested, like camping or visiting a national park, was met with a look of horror. That wasn't restorative. That was just dirt. But a holistic wellness retreat with her friends was essential for her mental and spiritual well-being. These retreats were never cheap. They involved staying at a fancy resort, getting massages, and attending workshops with names like Unleashing Your Inner Goddess. She'd come back armed with a new vocabulary of complaints. After one trip, she decided our apartment had stagnant energy. We needed to buy hundreds of dollars worth of crystals and sage to cleanse the space. I tried to argue, to bring some logic into it. The argument went exactly as you'd expect. My resistance wasn't about the money. It was about my fear of spiritual growth. I was uncomfortable with feminine power. I bought the stupid rocks. They sat on the bookshelf, collecting dust. The energy felt exactly the same. The relationship became a series of tests I didn't know I was taking. She'd ask loaded questions out of the blue. Do you think feminism has gone too far? Would you still love me if I decided I didn't want to work anymore and just focus on my art? She didn't have any art. There were no right answers. Each response was a potential landmine. If I was too agreeable, I was just placating her. If I disagreed, I was being argumentative and showing my fragile male ego. It was a constant low-level stress. I felt like I was always on guard, waiting for the next thing I would do or say wrong. I stopped offering opinions. I just agreed. It was easier. The peace I got in return was temporary, but better than the alternative. I was just coasting, working, paying bills, trying to keep the waters calm. The house was the one goal that kept me going, the finish line. I imagined a future where we had the house, things were settled, and maybe she would finally calm down. I thought the instability was situational, that once she felt secure, she'd relax. That was my mistake. The instability was the point. She thrived in chaos. The breaking point began on a Tuesday evening. It was a normal night. I was making dinner. She was on her laptop. The credit card bill was due, so I was doing my usual monthly budget review. I logged into our joint savings account, the one for the house. I just stared at the screen for a solid minute. The balance was not what it should have been. Not even close. It was several $1,000s short. A single large withdrawal had been made 3 days prior. My heart started beating faster. Not with anger, just with a cold, heavy feeling of dread. I knew this was it. This was the moment everything would change. I walked into the living room, holding my phone with the banking app open. I kept my voice as neutral as possible. No accusation, just a question. Hey, I was just looking at the house fund. There's a big withdrawal I don't recognize. Do you know what that was about? She didn't look up from her screen. Oh yeah, I moved it. It was for the course. Just like that. Matter of fact, like she was talking about buying groceries. The course? What course cost that much money? She finally closed her laptop and looked at me. Her expression was one of mild annoyance, like I was interrupting something important. It's not just a course, Liam. It's an intensive workshop. It's about spiritual alignment and manifesting your true calling. It's run by a very respected intuitive healer. I felt my brain struggling to process the words. Intuitive healer. Manifesting. You spent our down payment money on a psychic? The offense on her face was immediate and profound. She's not a psychic, and it's not your down payment money, it's our future. And I've decided our future needs to be built on a foundation of spiritual honesty, not just bricks and mortar. She stood up and started pacing, now fully in her element. She was the wise teacher, and I was the ignorant student. Don't you see? This is an investment in us, in my growth. When I'm spiritually fulfilled, our relationship will be better. My earning potential will be unlocked. This will pay for itself 100 times over. I just couldn't wrap my head around the sheer audacity. We had a goal, I said, my voice quiet. A plan we both agreed on. You can't just change the plan without even talking to me. That's where you're wrong, she said, pointing a finger at me. That was your plan, your boring, conventional, patriarchal dream of a house in the suburbs. A cage. I've evolved beyond that. She was framing this as her being enlightened and me being a caveman who just wanted a bigger cave. So, you just took the money I put in there every single week? It's not about the money, she exclaimed, throwing her hands up in the air. Why do you always make everything about money? This is about my journey, my path. I needed to take a bold step, to show the universe I was serious about my transformation. The conversation was going in circles. Logic had left the building. I wasn't talking to my partner. I was talking to a collection of self-help quotes from the internet. I took a deep breath, trying one last time to find common ground. Look, I'm not saying you can't explore things, but you have to see how this looks. You took thousands of dollars we were saving for something we both wanted, and you didn't even mention it to me. This, I thought, was an undeniable point, a simple fact. I was wrong. It was very deniable. This is exactly what I'm talking about, she said, her voice dripping with condescending pity. Your mindset is so rooted in scarcity. You see this as a loss. I see it as an investment in abundance. And frankly, your controlling attitude about our finances is a huge red flag. It's a form of toxic masculinity. And there it was, the magic words. The get-out-of-jail-free card for any bad behavior. Anything she did that was selfish or irresponsible was her journey. Anything I did to question it was toxic masculinity. I felt something inside me just switch off. It wasn't a snap. It was a quiet, clean break. The part of me that was trying, that was making excuses for her, that was hoping she'd change, it just went silent. All the arguments, all the double standards, all the little moments of disrespect coalesced into a single, clear thought. I'm done. I stopped talking. I just stood there, looking at her. My silence seemed to unnerve her more than my arguments. She was geared up for a fight, and I was refusing to participate. What? You're not even going to talk now? You're going to give me the silent treatment? That's textbook gaslighting, you know? She kept going, her voice getting louder, more desperate. She needed a reaction. She needed the drama. But there was nothing left to give. The well was dry. She was pacing back and forth, listing all of my supposed faults. My emotional unavailability, my lack of spiritual depth, my problematic friends, my boring hobbies. It was a greatest hits album of her complaints. I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't feel hurt. I felt distant. Like I was watching a movie about someone else's life. I finally understood that I could never win. The game was rigged. The only winning move was not to play. She saw she was losing her audience. She had to escalate. She stopped pacing and stood right in front of me, her eyes blazing. It was time for the nuclear option, the threat she had used a few times before, in smaller arguments to always get her way. You know what? I can't live like this. I can't be with someone who is actively holding me back from becoming my best self. She paused for dramatic effect, waiting for me to panic, to start pleading. I just watched her. Her voice became hard, final. If you can't support my journey and admit that you were wrong to question me, then this is over. I will walk out of that door right now, and I will never, ever come back. There it was, the final move. Checkmate. In her mind, the scene was set. I was supposed to break. I was supposed to see the gaping hole she would leave in my life. The script said I should apologize, beg her to stay, promise to be more supportive of her spending thousands of dollars on spiritual nonsense. She stood there, chin up, radiating the confidence of someone who holds all the cards. Her ultimatum hung in the air between us. The silence stretched on. 1 second, 2 seconds. I didn't feel panic. I didn't feel fear. I felt a strange sense of calm, a clarity I hadn't felt in years. She had just handed me the solution, the emergency exit I'd been too beaten down to look for. She thought she was holding a gun to my head, but she was really just handing me the key to my own cage. Without saying a word, I turned away from her. I walked the 10 feet to the front door of the apartment. I could feel her eyes on my back, her confidence probably wavering just a little, turning into confusion. I reached the door, my hand closed around the cold metal of the deadbolt. I turned it. The sound of the lock sliding back was incredibly loud in the quiet room. I pulled the door open until it couldn't go any further, flooding the entryway with the flat, neutral light from the hallway. Then I turned back to face her. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, next to the open door. I made a small gesture with my hand, a simple, open-palmed motion towards the exit. The expression on her face was something I will never forget. It was a rapid, cascading series of emotions. First, confusion. She didn't understand what was happening. This wasn't in the script. Then, disbelief. Her brain was catching up, realizing I was actually calling her bluff. Then, a flicker of panic. She had overplayed her hand. Finally, it settled on pure, undiluted rage. The rage of a manipulator whose favorite tool has just been taken away. "What are you doing?" she whispered, her voice tight. I remained silent. I just kept the door open. "You're serious? You would actually just let me walk away?" My silence was the only answer she needed. The reality of the situation crashed down on her. She had built the entire dynamic of our relationship on the foundation of my fear of losing her. And in one simple silent action, I had just shown her that I wasn't afraid anymore. The foundation had crumbled to dust. To stay now would be to admit defeat, to admit her threats were empty. Her power was an illusion. Her ego wouldn't allow that. She let out a sound that was half a sob, half a snarl. "Fine," she yelled. "Fine!" She stormed into the bedroom. I heard drawers being yanked open. I didn't move from the doorway. I just waited. She came back out a minute later, stuffing a few things into her oversized designer handbag, her phone, her wallet, a makeup bag, the essentials for an empowered exit. She walked towards the door, refusing to look at me. As she passed me in the doorway, she stopped for a second. "You're going to regret this," she spat, her voice thick with venom. "You'll be crawling back to me in a week, begging me to come back, but it'll be too late." I didn't respond. She walked out into the hallway. She stood there for a moment, as if expecting me to run after her, to pull her back. I just watched. With one last hateful glare, she turned and hurried towards the elevator. I watched until the elevator doors closed. Then I stepped back inside my apartment, closed the door, and turned the deadbolt. The click of the lock ceiling was the best sound I had ever heard. The apartment was completely silent. For the first time in years, the air didn't feel heavy with unspoken expectations and potential arguments. I stood in the middle of the living room. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I felt light. The first thing I did was pick up all the crystals and healing rocks from the bookshelf and drop them in the trash. The next morning, I woke up feeling rested for the first time in a long time. There was no one sighing loudly from the living room. No passive-aggressive comments about me taking too long in the shower. The silence was glorious. I made coffee, sat on my couch, and just enjoyed it. That weekend, I called my friends. "Hey, you guys busy Saturday?" "For you, never," one of them said. I could hear the relief in his voice. They came over, we ordered a mountain of pizza and wings. We played video games. We talked for hours. I told them what happened. I kept it simple. She gave an ultimatum. I opened the door. There was no judgment, just a collective sigh of relief. One of them slapped me on the back and said, "Welcome back, man." I realized how much I'd missed them, how much I'd isolated myself to keep the peace in a relationship that had none. The text messages from Yvonne started a few days later. At first, they were angry. "Hope you're happy in your empty, soulless apartment. I told all my friends what a toxic, unsupportive person you are." I didn't reply. I just deleted them. After about a week, the tone changed. They became manipulative. "I can't stop thinking about all the good times we had. I'm really struggling without you. I guess you never really cared about me at all." I recognized the tactic. It was an attempt to trigger guilt. It didn't work. I just felt empty. The good times she mentioned felt like they had happened to someone else. Life started improving in small, noticeable ways. My finances stabilized immediately. With no one spending my money on retreats and spiritual gurus, my bank account started to recover. I started working on my car again without feeling guilty about it. I finished the project and got it running perfectly. Driving it on an open road on a Saturday morning was a kind of therapy. I started going to the gym after work. I had more energy, I was sleeping better. My boss at work commented that I seemed more focused, more engaged. I got assigned to lead a new, important project. The apartment slowly transformed back into my space. Her clothes were still there, filling up half the closet. After a month of her not asking for them, I packed everything neatly into boxes and put them in the storage locker in the basement. I sent her one final simple text. "Your things are packed. They are in storage unit 2B. Let me know when you want to pick them up." She replied almost instantly. "You couldn't even bring them to me? You're unbelievable." I didn't respond. A few days later, a friend of hers came to get the boxes. I heard bits and pieces about her new life through the grapevine. She was staying on a friend's couch. The friend who had a couch was quickly growing tired of the arrangement. She apparently posted a lot on social media about her journey of bravely leaving a toxic relationship to live her authentic truth. The posts were full of triumphant hashtags about empowerment and independence. A mutual acquaintance told me the photos were usually taken in trendy cafes she couldn't afford, right before she went back to sleeping on her friend's lumpy sofa. Her online persona was a strong, thriving goddess. Her reality was a slow-motion collapse. The final phase of her texts began about 2 months after she left. Nostalgia. "I was just listening to that song we both liked. Made me sad. I miss the way you used to make coffee in the morning. Maybe I overreacted. We were good together." These were the most dangerous messages. They were designed to appeal to my sense of loyalty, my memories. But the memories were tainted. I couldn't remember a good moment without also remembering the anxiety that came with it. The constant fear of saying or doing the wrong thing. The feeling of walking on eggshells in my own home. I changed her name in my phone to "Do Not Answer" and archived the conversation. About 3 months went by. Life was good, calm, stable. I was out one Saturday afternoon, picking up some groceries. As I was walking back to my car, I saw her across the street. It took me a second to recognize her. She looked frayed, worn out. The confident, perfectly curated image she projected was gone. Her clothes were wrinkled. Her hair was a mess. She was standing on the corner, having a very loud, very angry phone conversation. She wasn't the powerful goddess from her social media posts. She was just a person who was having a really bad day. Or maybe a really bad life. Our eyes met for a brief second across the street. I saw that same cascade of emotions I'd seen at the doorway, but in a different order. Anger first, then a flash of desperation, then something that looked almost like shame. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity. I didn't even feel satisfaction. I felt nothing. She was a stranger, a ghost from a past life. I didn't smile. I didn't scowl. I just held her gaze for a moment. Then I broke eye contact, put my groceries in the trunk of my car, and got in. I started the engine. It hummed perfectly. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I glanced in my rearview mirror. She was still standing there, phone now lowered, just watching me drive away. I drove onto the highway, turned up the music, and headed home. The sun was out. The road was open. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt completely and totally free. She had threatened to walk away to punish me. In the end, opening the door was the kindest thing I ever did for myself.